couldn't handle the simplicity of it. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't retaliate. You didn't plot. You simply detached. And that act alone dismantled everything they believed about power. Their meltdown wasn't from defeat. It was from exposure. They realized too late that your silence wasn't retreat. It was strategy. They kept trying to explain your calm to others. But how does one rationalize composure in the face of chaos? How do you define a person who doesn't flinch when provoked? They used to rely on reactions. They fed off your energy. And when you stopped feeding them, their identity collapsed. That was the destruction they never anticipated. Not from fire, not from fury, but from stillness that revealed their dependency. They wanted to be seen as the clever ones. They thought manipulation would grant control, that performance could disguise insecurity. But when you stopped playing, they lost purpose. You became the mirror that refused to reflect them. Their sense of superiority was built on response, and your indifference stole their supply. They began unraveling, replaying every moment where they tried to get a rise out of you. The psychology of narcissism is simple. They need validation, even in conflict. Without your participation, they lost their narrative. And so they tried to explain it away, claiming luck, coincidence, divine interference, anything but accountability. They can't comprehend how you destroyed them without lifting a hand. They can't accept that you didn't fight. You simply outgrew the arena. The mind breaks when it can no longer lie to itself. They spent years painting you as fragile, impulsive, unprepared. Their stories gave them comfort. But when you rose above their noise with discipline and composure, it rewired their hierarchy. The predator became powerless. You became a reminder that control doesn't come from domination. It comes from detachment. They can't explain that kind of reversal because it makes them look small. They'll say you changed, that you became cold, calculating, cruel. But those are just the words of someone trying to justify why their manipulation failed. What they call cruelty is actually clarity. You simply stopped negotiating your worth. Their greatest fear wasn't your strength, it was your indifference. You learned the secret that breaks manipulators. Attention is currency, and when you stop spending it, their economy collapses. They had built their entire confidence on how easily they could provoke you. Every eye roll, every sigh, every attempt to defend yourself once fed their ego. But now, your calm starves them. They melt down because control was their identity. When you refused to participate in the emotional circus, they were left performing to an empty crowd. They can't handle the silence because silence has a sound. It echoes guilt. What they call destruction was really revelation. You didn't ruin them, you revealed them. Their mask couldn't survive in the light of your awareness. You read their intentions before they acted, saw through their charm before they spoke. That level of insight isn't mystical. It's trained through pain. You learn to observe before reacting, to read motives behind smiles. They thought their deceit made them untouchable, but it only made them predictable. And when predictability meets awareness, the game ends. They tried to explain your precision as manipulation, but it was simply discernment. You didn't play smarter, you stopped playing altogether. That's why they lost so catastrophically. They want people to believe they're still in control. So they talk, they rewrite, they twist. But their voices crack when they speak your name. You became their obsession because you proved that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just watches. Their meltdown comes from confusion. How did someone so quiet cause such chaos? The answer terrifies them. Truth has no volume, only impact. You've turned calmness into an atmosphere they can't breathe in. Their lies suffocate in the air of your authenticity. They can't explain it to anyone because there's no logic in watching your own illusion dissolve. The mind seeks patterns to survive, but you became the pattern breaker. Every time they expected weakness, they met poise. Every time they set traps, you stepped over them. It's disorienting for people who live through manipulation to encounter someone immune to it. You taught them that emotional control isn't passivity. It's power disguised as grace. They can't rationalize why your restraint feels so threatening. They wanted a reaction, a fight, a visible fracture. But you stayed still. That stillness is what shattered them. Because nothing destroys the manipulator faster than someone who no longer reacts to manipulation. You didn't fight them. You let them fight their own reflection. They'll never admit how much they studied you. They dissect your confidence, analyze your tone, compare your timing to their own. They're looking for weakness that no longer exists. Their entire identity depends on understanding how they lost control, but you didn't defeat them through intellect. You defeated them through evolution. You detached from their emotional games and attached to your own vision. That's what they can't handle. You became purpose, driven while they remained attention-driven. You built systems while they built stories. They're melting down not because of you, but because without your chaos, they have no audience. They keep trying to explain your strength to others as if it's supernatural. They say you changed overnight. They whisper that someone's helping you, that you found some secret edge. But the truth is simpler and sharper. You became self-aware. Once you learned how to control your mind, you stopped being controlled by theirs. Awareness breaks spells. It exposes intentions, patterns, and projections. They can't compete with that. Their power was built on your confusion, and you replaced confusion with consciousness. That's the kind of transformation that can't be undone. They're not melting from loss. They're melting from exposure. The truth is unbearable because it doesn't need defense. It stands quietly, unmoved by denial, unmoved by noise. They run from it because they know it dismantles everything they built to feel superior. You were never their enemy, but your existence became evidence of their deceit. They can't live in the same light that exposes their motives. You don't have to prove anything. The truth does it for you. It speaks through results, through silence, through the calm that replaced your explanations. They feel it like a pulse under their skin, that discomfort that follows every mention of your name. The truth reminds them that they fabricated strength through manipulation, while you earned yours through endurance. That's why they can't bear it. It doesn't just reveal facts, it reveals character. And when the mask falls, the room feels colder. They spent so long building illusions that reality feels like punishment. The human ego can only sustain deceit if others agree with it. But the moment someone refuses to participate, the illusion starts to rot. You were that disruption. You stopped validating their stories, their excuses, their versions of events. You didn't fight, you withdrew belief. And that withdrawal forced the truth to surface. They call it betrayal because they relied on your blindness. You stopped pretending, and that was their undoing. The truth, once denied, doesn't fade. It waits. It lurks in inconsistencies, in timelines, in the tremble of their voice when someone asks a simple question. They can't bear that kind of exposure, because once the truth is visible, every lie becomes a confession. They can't rewrite what everyone saw. They tried to frame you as emotional, irrational, unstable. But over time, stability became your signature. You grew quieter. You refined your moves. You made peace with what was real. That evolution didn't just heal you, it convicted them. Now, when people compare words to outcomes, they see who was consistent and who was performative. That's the unbearable part. They crafted a stage of deception, but you lived your life as evidence. And evidence, once revealed, doesn't need applause. It only needs time. Every conversation they have about you now sounds rehearsed. Every justification feels heavy. They've been trapped by their own need to explain what no longer makes sense. Their pain isn't from guilt, it's from exposure. Guilt implies awareness, exposure forces acknowledgement. They didn't want to see themselves as wrong, selfish, or cruel. But life mirrors back what we project, and you became that mirror. Your strength didn't humiliate them, it reflected them. They see how little substance they had when you stopped giving them meaning. That's the unbearable truth. Your presence gave their ego life, and your absence killed it. They used to think dominance came from control, but you taught them that real dominance comes from detachment. You didn't destroy them. You simply stopped carrying their delusions. They built their confidence on spectators, but truth doesn't perform for crowds. It walks through the aftermath, calm and irreversible. That's why they hide behind stories. They're easier to manipulate than evidence. You've noticed how they talk in half-truths, how they shift tone when questioned. They live in self-defense mode now because their narrative collapsed under its own weight. The more they try to explain, the more transparent they become. They tell people you changed, that you became calculating, cold. What they fail to realize is that awareness looks threatening to the dishonest. You stopped reacting emotionally because you learned control. That control is what they fear. It means they can't move you anymore. And in that realization lies the unbearable sting. They tried to make you doubt your memory. They wanted you to believe you were overreacting, remembering wrong, or misinterpreting. But over time, facts began to align themselves in your favor. Patterns repeated. Truth accumulated. You stopped chasing closure because reality provided it. Now they sit in the discomfort of knowing that every gaslight, every lie, every attempt to distort has turned against them. They can't accuse you anymore because everyone has seen the consistency in your growth. They have to live with the image of themselves that they can't fix. That's the weight of truth. It doesn't argue, it just remains. When people see truth unfold slowly, they shift alliances. The same ones who once laughed at you now look at you differently. You didn't have to prove innocence. You had to stay aligned. And that long-term composure turned into evidence they can't refute. They can't handle the loss of control that comes when others see through them. The truth took away their leverage, their narrative, their perceived authority. They feel it every time your name is mentioned with respect. Every time you succeed quietly, they feel the spotlight drift further from their reach. You became the embodiment of consequence without seeking revenge. That's why they melt under your presence. It reminds them that deception may fool the moment, but not the timeline. You've noticed how they avoid your eyes now. There's a tremor in their voice, a delay in their smile, a hesitation when others bring you up. That's not regret, it's fear. They know they can't manipulate perception anymore. You exist as living proof of everything they denied. The truth doesn't fade with time, it amplifies. It ages better than lies. While their stories grow inconsistent, your actions stay linear. That comparison kills them softly. You didn't expose them through confrontation, you exposed them through evolution. They underestimated how powerful quiet growth can be. The truth doesn't roar, it haunts. It stays in the air, long after apologies lose meaning. They thought survival meant erasing you. But absence doesn't delete truth, it magnifies it. The more they tried to bury your name, the more it grew in whispers, in rumors, in admiration. People started asking questions they couldn't answer. Their explanations became contradictions. They panicked, trying to sound righteous while sounding rehearsed. Every lie now sounds defensive, every claim forced. And the worst part for them is knowing you're not even trying. You're living, building, thriving. They're explaining. That imbalance burns the ego because control is their oxygen, and you've taken it away. They can't breathe in a world that remembers what they tried to hide.